Boxing, man against man, the ultimate sport. Get ready to rumble. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal. With your host, legendary trainer and boxing expert, Gil Clancy. Featuring the biggest and brightest stars, plus the up-and-comers of the fight game. Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal. I have two exciting guests tonight. Heavyweight contender Michael Dokes and his manager, Marty Cohen. Marty, you did such a great job with Michael Dokes. Everybody had given up on Mike. You got a hold of him. You brought him around. You got him back in shape. You got him to fight with Holyfield. It was one of the greatest heavyweight fights in many, many a year. Either guy could have won the fight. Unfortunately, Mike got hit on the chin. He was the loser that night. Maybe the next night it would have been something different. But now, Marty, with all of his good credits and everything, all the New York newspapers are writing the story that you could have had a chance for him to fight Mike Tyson for the championship of the world. And it's been in all the papers. Don King said, you killed the deal.
Well, you have to know Don King to know which story to believe. Now, I had a meeting with Don King yesterday, about an hour and a half. And the first thing that I put to DK was, hey, Don, we've been around the block so many times all through the years. How in God's earth could you have told Mike Marley, it was your quote, that I killed the deal? As when you called me, I was one day out of the hospital. That was 10 days after I was operated on. I was flat on my back with my legs up in the air with a pillow between my legs. And Gil, you know, we're two hip kids now. Right. You had your hip done, I had my hip done, so you know what I'm talking about.
I sure do.
And he offered me $1 million. And I said, Don, how could you offer me $1 million for Mike when you gave Williams $1.6 million? I said, what do you compare Dokes and Tyson as against Williams and Tyson to sell a heavyweight fight? I said, this is a natural, good heavyweight fight. As a matter of fact, you know, don't sell Mike short. He's liable to lick him. Perhaps I shouldn't have said that because I think I scared them a bit. They're afraid of Mike Dokes today. And I honestly believe that. Now I'm talking to him yesterday. I said, we wound up, you offered me the $1 million. I told you I couldn't accept the $1 million. He said, well, what do you want? And off the top of my head, I said $3 million. Well, he didn't say I can't pay it or this, that, the other thing. And I mentioned that the Gardeners involved. They don't want to be co-promoters, but they'll accept the fee because they brought him along, and I've got to consider them. Right, it's no more than right. Plus the fact, if Mike wins the title, for his next 3 defenses of the title, the Gardeners to get a fee. He said, well, I'll call you back. I said, great, Don, because I'm not in a position now to talk to you about it. I said, but you'll call me. He said, yes, I'll call you back. Now, that was the last that I heard from Don King.
You mean you haven't spoken to Don King since that conversation?
Since that phone call, yesterday was the first time I spoke to him. And this was the conversation that I confronted him with. I said, how after all these years? I said, I made the Berbick fight for you. I brought Julian Jackson to you. I helped you with Duran in 2 spots, in Miami Beach and in Philadelphia. I brought Camacho to you. I never cut Camacho. I never cut you. I never took a dime from you. I put my hands up this way. I said, is this what I got? 0? He says, yes. Braverman is sitting there. I said, I don't do these things for money. I could have cut Camacho $500,000. He got $1.5 million for 2 fights. I could have got $500,000.
1/3, that's right.
I didn't take a dime. I said, Mike Dokes, I could have cut him all down through the years, and especially with the comeback. I said, he's never even paid for a postage stamp. I've got all the checks. I've got everything that I pay out. He's never paid for a phone call.
You know, I see Mike keep shaking his head. Mike, when you read in the paper that Marty blew the deal and you lost the Tyson fight, were you angry at Marty?
By no means, Gil. Whatever judgment that Pop's made, I'm sure it's in my behalf. So there's never a doubt in my mind whether he's blowing the deal for me or betrayed me or anything like that. That never crosses my mind.
Well, this is a great relationship now. This is like it used to be with, remember old Pop Foster, the fight
That's
manager?
right, with McClellan.
Yeah.
Hey, I have no contracts. I don't need a contract. This is why we used to do business on the handshake. Hey, I'd call guys when I was promoting the St. Nick, the Grove, the Queensboro, all these clubs through Pennsylvania. I'd call Jimmy Johnson, he'd call me, or any of the other guys. Who you got? What do you need? What are we getting? That's it.
You know, Marty, for a guy who's going to be 93 years old tomorrow. 92
no.
years old tomorrow.
No.
That's right, you're not an old guy. You're only going to be 92.
Yes.
But, you know, you've talked about
with
this...
the new hip.
With the new hip. You talked about your conversation with King. He never called you back to negotiate. He just brushed you aside, made the Ruddock fight, and he announced that Buster Douglas would be after Ruddock. Now...
Yes. And yesterday I was with Don King, and I offered to fight Buster Douglas. Let the winner fight Tyson next.
You didn't know. You mean you offered for Dokes to fight him?
I offered for Dokes
but you're not going to fight him, are you?
Well, I'm talking for Mike Dokes.
Oh, I thought maybe you wanted to fight him.
No, you know we always talk that way. When you had Griffith, so you said, we'll fight anybody.
Right, okay.
You were outside and he was catching the punches.
That's right. I backed up the other way.
That's right. Now, naturally, I'm talking for Mike. And I said, yes, Mike will fight Buster Douglas. What do you have to fool around with any other guys for? Let Mike and Douglas fight it out. Now you got a natural. The winner fights Tyson.
Well, you know, that's the way it should be. And as you know, I've said many a time on my show, one of the guys I'd like to see Tyson fight is Michael Dokes. And I've said it because he takes a tremendous punch. He's got fast, accurate hands, and he's got good legs. So in the fight, I know that he would be hitting Mike Tyson. And then we might see, you know, maybe Michael be great when he gets hit, but maybe not. So it'll be interesting to the public. He's one of the guys that can give Mike Tyson trouble. So do you think that maybe the King is using this as a subterfuge, the money to avoid Michael Dokes with Mike Tyson?
I think he's using anything at all, money especially, because this is number one with DK, is the money. Number two, he said, no, I'll tell you the truth. Mike is the one that killed it. I said, what do you mean Mike killed? How could he kill the deal?
Talking about Mike Dokes.
Mike Dokes. Mike Dokes killed the deal.
Wait a minute. How did you kill the deal? What are you doing now, Dokes?
I have no idea about that at all. If I did do anything to kill a deal, I'm not aware of it, so I don't worry about it yet.
What did they say? How could he kill the deal?
He said
the fighter,
Mike
not the
Tyson
manager.
called Mike Dokes 4 times, and Mike Dokes never returned his call. King called. Duke Dayton called. So I said, Don, why should anybody call the fighter when you know I'm his manager? You don't talk to a fighter, you talk to the manager. We know each other well enough to speak to one another, same as we're sitting here now. He didn't have the nerve to call him back. Now Tyson is mad at him, and he don't want to fight him. You know why he don't want to fight him? He's afraid of him. That was the conversation.
Well, I would have to say the way to resolve this situation, we know that his next fight's going to be with Razor Ruddock. I'm sure the fans would like to see it this way, too. Rather than Mike Tyson being able to pick and choose, no, I'll fight this guy, I'll fight that guy. It's not supposed to be that way. They have Buster Douglas's name on the agenda. Let him fight Michael Dokes, and then let the winner fight Mike Tyson.
That's exactly what I proposed.
Well, that's exactly. How about you, Mike? How'd you like to fight Douglas with the winner to fight
I
this
really
Tyson?
have no problem with fighting anyone. You know, the name of the game is fighting and stay active. And if Buster Douglas comes up on my agenda, perform with next, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, you wanted to mention something about drugs, Marty. You didn't tell me what it was, but in the brief time we have left, tell us what it's all about.
This has nothing to do with Mike Dokes.
Okay.
I'm talking about, we keep reading, you know, Gil, you and I, we had a problem. We had a hip problem. What did we do? We went to see a doctor, and we spoke about it. We had a problem. And so, after speaking to the doctor, we decided to have replacement. If you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. You talk about which tooth hurts you, and he does what he has to do. If you have a legal problem, you go to an attorney, and you talk about it. Now, here I am of the Jewish faith. He's a Baptist, I believe. Is that right? You're a Catholic. I believe in all faiths, and I believe in Catholicism for one special reason. And I think I mentioned that to you before.
I know what it is.
And that is because of confession.
Confession, right.
Now,
Poor man's psychiatrist.
Well, I don't care what it is, but I believe in that wholeheartedly. And we've spoken in front of forums, in front of high school kids and others, and I've gotten letters, and I've got a letter from the New York City Board of Education where we appeared out in Far Rockaway in front of a group that we spoke to relative to the drug problem. As now, drugs is a disease. Why? Why? The same as any other disease. And President George Bush, I wish you're listening, and if you're not listening, if somebody's listening, tell George Bush, let's get down and talk about this disease. Let's confess about it. Let Mike Dokes tell it. I'll go with him. I'll go anywhere. This, to me, is what's important. Mike Dokes is now an example because he talked to me. He confessed. He let the world know. He let me know, and I let everybody else know. And this is a shining example of what can be done. They're allocating billions of dollars. The Army, the Coast Guard, with airplanes, guys getting killed and whatnot, but nobody wants to talk about the disease.
Well, I hope all of you out there are listening. If you can get somebody to talk about their problems, I'm sure it'll help a great deal. And President Bush, talk to this 92-year-old young man. You might learn something. We're staying with the heavyweights today. My guest now is promoter manager Mike Barrett from, what is it, jolly old London, Mike?
Good old London, London town.
And Derek Sweet D. Williams, one of Great Britain's leading heavyweight contenders. You know, they're always saying, who's going to be around to fight Mike Tyson? There's nobody that can fight him. Derek, you've spent a lot of time in training with Mike Tyson. Now, are you going to speak for yourself, or do you want your manager to talk about your workouts with Mike Tyson?
Okay, we'll both speak about it, because it was a great experience working with Mike Tyson. I was out there for 5.5, 6 weeks, sparring. I became his main sparring partner. But the funny thing about it, when I first got to the camp, they must have thought, because I was from London or England, they'd think I'd be going back soon, because they don't really rate British fighters over here, so I noticed. But it came to happen that I became the leading sparring partner, pushing Mike back, and what I realized was that I had more technical skill than Mike, and he wasn't as stronger than me. I thought he would have been a lot stronger than what he was, and that just gave me a lot of confidence in my own self, knowing my boxing ability and my strength. So I'm looking to be up there shortly, next 18 months or so.
How old are you now?
24.
24 years of age. You spent so many... How long was he in camp, Mike, with Tyson?
5 weeks.
5 weeks?
5 weeks, yeah.
And I know from when I used to hire the sparring partners to work with Jerry Quarry and Foreman and guys like that I trained, that a sparring partner, after 3 or 4 days, they tell you their rib hurts, their nose hurts, and they leave camp. But he stayed there the entire time.
He knocked Tyson's gum shield out. He was...
You people in America, the gum shield is the mouthpiece.
The mouthpiece.
Over there we call them the gum shield.
So he knocked his mouthpiece out. When Tyson came at him, he hit him back where the others wanted to cover up and run. This guy, in 600 days' time, would not only beat the hell out of Mike Tyson. I have not the slightest doubt about it.
Well, you fight fans, if you want to put a check on your calendar and count up 600 days, that's when we're going to have a new heavyweight champion of the world, according to Mike Barrett. How do you feel about that,
Well,
Dave?
that's what I feel. I respect Mike Tyson. I respect Mike Tyson a great deal after working with him. But I realize that I'm the better fighter. It's experience right now. Mike Tyson's got over me. But like I noticed, a lot of guys tend to like try to boost themselves up and say they're the best and say that they're number one. I wouldn't really go around saying that I'm the best and everything, but I'm speaking the truth that I've got the better boxing ability and skill, natural skill, and know-how.
Mike, what's his record right now?
15-1.
And he lost. Has he been down? Has he been knocked out? Or down?
Never.
And I don't intend to be.
And he lost one fight on his...
One fight.
Who beat him?
By one round. Before I had him in his 5th professional fight, he'd had 4 6 2-minute round fights. And his manager at that time threw him in an 8 3-minute round fight with the champion of South Africa at a week's notice, and he lost by 1 round. You know.
Okay, and you're allowed to lose fights. You know, as long as you learn something from a fight, I think that's the best thing. These guys nowadays, they duck everybody. They never let their guy fight. Would you say that he's the best heavyweight in Great Britain right now, Mike?
He is the
you have that Gary Mason.
He's the Commonwealth heavyweight champion. He's due to fight Mason for the vacant European championship, but I hear from over there that they're going to pull Mason out. They don't want to fight him. It's okay. I don't blame them. It's a wise move on Mickey Duff's part not to fight him.
They're very smart. The Mason people are very smart. They maneuvered Frank Bruno into a world title fight without fighting anyone, and they're doing the same sort of thing with Mason. Mason to fight someone like me is stepping out of his league. You see, they've built him up on a lot of, I think you call stiffs over here. Mason has been knocking guys, or Mason is 17 and a half, 18 stone. He's been fighting guys 13 stone, 14 stone, looking good.
Well, that's what George Foreman is doing, fighting cruiserweights.
Yeah. Well, that's right, but that's no good for boxing at all. That's just a bad name for boxing. The guys I've been fighting have been big, strong guys who are capable. No one can ever say Sweet D has been fighting light heavyweights or stiffs.
Well, that's what's going to make a better fighter out of you, Derek.
Right.
I didn't duck too many guys when I managed fighters, as you know, Mike.
Sure.
You know, one thing I can't understand about the British psychology. When Frank Bruno lost to Mike Tyson, he went back to Great Britain to a hero's welcome.
Right.
To me, I think that was the most undeserved thing I've ever seen in my life. He may be a great guy. Everybody says he's a great guy and everything else. But let's face it, he hit Mike Tyson with a good left hook and hurt him early in the fight. And after he hit him, he got frightened.
Sure.
Right.
He was absolutely frightened. He was overawed. He's, my God, I hit Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Why did I do anything like that, which is what he's supposed to do? And after that, the guy never threw a punch with serious intentions at all. And he got stopped in 5 rounds, yet you British people had him a hero. Were you one of the guys that were there waving flags and everything for him?
We're not like that. That's been the downfall of the British fighters in the past. They've been like saying, oh yeah, I hit him with a good shot. They've done that with Henry Cooper against Muhammad Ali. They made him into a hero because he dropped Ali. But that's not the fight game. Winning is the game. There's 2 guys in there, and you've got to be a winner to be something.
You know, Mike, that British psychology of making heroes out of losers, as Sweet D here said, that may be the wrong thing to do. And I think this young guy's mind, he's a student of boxing. I mean, I can tell right away he came back to the time when Henry Cooper hurt Muhammad Ali and almost had him out, except that mysteriously Ali's glove got cut open by we know who, my ex-sparring partner, Angelo Dundee. But he's the kind of a young guy that I think if he fought a Mike Tyson, I don't know him that well yet, that he wouldn't be overawed. One of the reasons that he wouldn't be overawed, he's been in the ring with him. How many rounds would you say you've boxed with Mike Tyson now?
I would say roughly 30 rounds or more, up to 40 rounds. I became, like I said, his leading sparring partner because I didn't have no fear of Mike Tyson.
And here's a guy, 6'5", 225 pounds.
Yeah.
Moves good, Mike. I haven't seen him. So.
Moves like Muhammad Ali.
And he can punch.
And can punch like dynamite.
Well, I tell you, that's the kind of guy I'd like to see move ahead.
Well, that's the thing. Britain has never produced a heavyweight like me before. Frank Bruno has been big, but very slow and very limited in his boxing abilities. They've got other fighters that they've tried to bring along, but they really never had it. They ain't got no drive, no nothing. It's just manufactured fighters. With me, I've had 16 fights, and even in Britain, I'm like not that well known as yet. because I've been learning the game. You know, I've not been like media production.
Well, where were you born?
London.
Born right in London.
Yeah, right
You're
in
a
London.
Britisher through and through, right?
Right through to the blood.
And Mike, how long have you been associated with Derek?
How long now?
About 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
3 years, yeah. Yeah, but he's been doing a lot of work. Bobby Neal teaches him and trains him.
Wait a
in the
minute,
gym.
you can understand Bobby Neal when he talks to you with that
Well-
Scotch accent?
When Bobby teaches boxing, that's different. He goes into a different level completely.
No, I used to fool with Bobby Neal all the time. I'd let him talk to me for about 5 minutes
Right.
with that heavy Scotch accent. I'd say, what did you say?
Right.
You know, you don't realize, you know, that your manager here, Mike Barrett and myself, go back a long, long way. He
Right.
used to be the promoter in Great Britain when I was bringing guys like Emil Griffith and Tommy
Right.
Bethea over. So we have a long, long relationship, and I want you to know that you are with the boxing man. He's not going to make too many mistakes when it comes to your career. If you train well and he has the ability you say that he says you have, there's no reason why in those 600 days you might not be in the ring for real with Mike Tyson.
Well, that's the thing about it. I'm looking forward to those 600 days myself. To be honest, I don't think Mike Tyson will be there. Because I don't think that, at the moment, there's no heavyweight on the scene, really, to, like, disturb Mike Tyson. And he might lose the interest. Then, if he's not there, then I'll become the new champion. Michael most probably want to come back and say, well, he can beat Sweet D. And that'll make something very
He's
interesting.
got it all figured out. Tyson's going to be, he's going to be the champ, and Tyson's going to be the challenger.
That's what's going to make it big.
How are we doing Baltimore stuff?
You know,
Leave that out.
Let me tell you something. I don't think, you may not need a manager or a publicist. I mean, we might get rid of this guy right now. What about that, Mike? I mean, he's got everything all figured out.
Right.
Are you going to continue the campaign over here, or are you going to do most of your fighting in the Great Britain?
I think we want to come back. When he comes back, Mike.
I want him fighting regularly against good opponents anywhere in the world. He's going to go out to Zimbabwe and defend the Commonwealth title that he has against the champion there. And Australia, fight at home. I want him fighting regularly. That's how he's going to learn.
That's exactly right. That's the way to develop a young fighter. And this record is 15-1 now. It wouldn't make any difference, for example, if it was 27-2 or 3, as long as you get better each fight. That's the mistake that so many guys make now. They go undefeated, but they never fought anybody, and the first time they're tested, they just can't stand up. Here's a guy, you keep putting him in these different, especially in different venues, you get the different experience fighting in front of other people. Here's a guy, ladies and gentlemen, Derek Sweet D. Williams. Keep that name in mind. And Mike Barrett, it's a pleasure seeing you again.
Gil,
And Derek,
great pleasure to me.
I wish you all the best.
Thanks a lot.
And we'll be back next week with another show.
Get ready to rumble. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal. With your host, legendary trainer and boxing expert, Gil Clancy. Featuring the biggest and brightest stars, plus the up-and-comers of the fight game. Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Gil Clancy's Boxing Journal. My guest tonight is Dave Bontempo, top boxing columnist for the Atlantic City Press, as well as ESPN boxing commentator. You know, Dave, normally I do the interviewing on these shows, but I understand you have some questions to ask me, so shoot.
I think it's time to turn the tables, Gil, because you did, leaving the comforts of this business to go back into the corner to train Jerry Cooney against George Foreman. Tell me, why did you do it?
Well, first of all, I didn't leave this business, Dave. I'm still going to continue to do my shows and to do my work for Madison Square Garden. But the reasons why I decided to accept this challenge are many. Jerry Cooney has always been a favorite of mine as far as potential talent unfulfilled. I remember him from the time he was an amateur when he knocked out the Russian heavyweight in Madison Square Garden, showed tremendous potential. I was the matchmaker in Madison Square Garden for a lot of his early fights, and I put him in with some fairly decent opponents. Tom Prater, who went the distance with Larry Holmes, and, you know, he destroyed Ken Norton in Madison Square Garden. And I could always see the potential there, but I just did not like the way his managers moved him along. They kept turning down one opponent after the other, and I think eventually they took Jerry's confidence away from him. And by the time he fought Michael Spinks, he had no enthusiasm for boxing whatsoever. He has convinced me that he's turned over a new leaf. He's involved with a business manager by the name of Tom Mara, who's a terrific guy. I think has had a tremendous influence in changing his lifestyle around. And he's convinced me that he has. And I think that it's an interesting challenge, and I think we're going to have a great fight with George Foreman.
Why do you think the hunger still burns in Jerry? So much money he's made in the ring, a lot of people would be satisfied with that.
Well, see, that's the good part about it. He's really not doing this for the money, but he had such an unsatisfactory ending to his career to be slapped around by a blown-up light heavyweight and eventually stopped. You couldn't have finished a career worse. And, you know, money isn't everything, Dave. You have to live with yourself. Hopefully he has a long life ahead of him. And believe me, that would be the thing that he'd remember the rest of his life.
As you look at Jerry's career all the way through, where would you have done things differently if it had been up to you?
Well, first of all, I would have had him fighting a lot more often than he did fight. As he mentioned at the press conference, he was in the gymnasium for years, and he had 3 fights, but he was always in the gymnasium training. But his management kept turning down fights. I mean, for example, when I was a matchmaker in Madison Square Garden, I offered him Marvin Stimson as an opponent, who you know is just an ordinary heavyweight. And the reason I thought I could get away with the fight was because Joe Frazier managed Marvin Stimson. I figured we could get the publicity, put some people in Madison Square Garden. His management turned down that fight. And they turned down many a fight like that. And my belief is in boxing that you don't have to win every fight. You can lose a fight as long as you learn from a fight, and you're only as good as your last fight. So if he would have fought more often, I think he would have got more experience and become a much better fighter. However, they didn't handle him that way.
Was he ready when he fought Larry Holmes?
No, he wasn't ready. And, you know, he was down on himself in that fight, but he did a miraculous job. Mm-hmm. People don't realize, I don't know how many fights he had. Let's say he had 20 fights, but he didn't have 20 fights because he was knocking everybody out in a round or 2. No. So round-wise, he may have had like 3 or 4 fights. And for a big heavyweight to go into the 13th round in that blazing heat in Las Vegas without really any experience was an amazing feat, I thought. I don't think he should have been down on himself at all.
Is he mean enough?
Well, as he said he doesn't want anybody calling him Gentleman Jerry Cooney any longer.
Well, that's for the label, but in your heart, do you think he's mean enough?
It's not for the label. He told me that. He didn't tell me to say that at the press conference. He just doesn't want anybody calling him Jerry. And I think that what's going to happen, he's going to remember that Michael Spinks fight. And that's going to change him around mentally and make him a much meaner guy in the ring.
What do you think that he'll look back on that Spinks fight and get so mad about that he'll be a better fighter here?
Well, you know, I criticized him severely after that fight, David. It's a wonder that he would even talk to me again. Because I said that the Jerry Cooney that I saw in the Spinks fight had absolutely no instinct to be a fighter at all. I mean, I compared him, Mike Tyson, as a guy that fights strictly on instinct. If you hit Mike Tyson, he's looking to kill you. And as I told Jerry Cooney, I said, Jerry, if I was walking down the street and a guy slapped me in the face, he may slap me a second time. But by the 3rd time, I would at least be punching back. But Cooney, when I say he completely lost his instinct for fighting, I'm not saying boxing, I'm saying fighting. In the Spinks fight, Michael stood in front of him, hit him not once, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And Jerry just stood there, just didn't seem to have any desire to throw a punch back. That's what I mean by when I say he completely lost his instinct to be a fighter.
Now, how do you lose that? Was that not enough sparring? Was that discontinued sparring? What happened to him?
No, I think he just became completely disillusioned with the sport of boxing. I think he had completely lost confidence. And when he got hit a couple of punches by a small guy like Michael Spinks and felt the effect of the punches, he just didn't know what to do. If you remember, he looked to his corner for help. They can't help you when you're in the middle of that ring.
Now, what about the fight coming up? You analyzed George Foreman. You've been with George Foreman. You've taken him places. Now you're on the other side. How do you go against him?
Well, you know, George, I trained George for 7 pro fights. I know George very well, but so does every other trainer. I mean, George fights one way. I don't have any secrets that's going to help Jerry in this fight. George comes at you to just search and destroy. That's George Foreman. But what we have to do is we have to beat George Foreman to the punch.
So a fight that could be held in like a 4-foot ring almost, huh?
Well, I would have to say so. I don't think there's going to be too much dancing around in the fight. Again, George comes at you, and Jerry, you know, if Jerry hits anybody with that left hook, they're gone. You know, you mentioned the fact about Jerry not having a mean streak, but if you remember in the Ken Norton fight, it looked like he may have even seriously hurt Kenny Norton because he was on the way down, and Jerry hit him a couple of vicious punches. But I think all of that was ground out of him by this maneuvering. The managers maneuvering this way, maneuvering that way, not putting him in any fights.
Gil, you've been, you know, a disciplinarian as far as your, you know, the way you like to approach the sport has got to be just a certain way. What about doing that with a multimillionaire? Can you control that? Do you foresee any conflict in that?
Well, you know, the way I train fighters, we have a set routine. The guy has to get up at the same time every day. He has to eat his breakfast at the same time, his dinner at the same time, be in the gym. And if I thought that Jerry couldn't handle this kind of discipline, I wouldn't be with him. But he has convinced me that he has changed his lifestyle completely. I'm 100% convinced of that.
What would happen if even a month beforehand you thought that things were different in that regard and you couldn't work it out?
Well, then I would just have to tell Jerry, we're not compatible. And I'd just have to walk away.
Mm-hmm. How do you think of the age factor in this fight? How many miles are really on George Foreman?
Well, George, he's a 42-year-old miracle man. There's no question about that. But you have to remember that he's been knocking out blown-up light heavyweights and cruiserweights. But even fighting those guys gives him a distinct advantage over Jerry Cooney because of the fact that he's been active and Cooney has not been active. Just the fact of walking up those steps, being introduced in front of a live crowd with an opponent across the ring from you helps you a great deal. I always liked an active fighter over a guy that was inactive. So that's one of the things that we're going to have to overcome as far as that's the handicap that Jerry has in this fight. As far as George being 42 years of age, and Jerry, in my opinion, could be at the peak of his prime right now. Physical condition-wise, he could be the best he ever was. Irish people, Norwegians, Swedes, all of them from the northern European countries, all mature late, especially the big guys. And Jerry now is just 33 years of age. He could be right at his physical peak.
What do you look for as the main ingredient Jerry has over him?
Well, I think that Jerry's going to have a big edge in hand speed, and I think Jerry punches much harder with one punch than George punches. I've always rated George as not a great puncher, but a great clubber. I mean, he would hit you and really hurt you. He could even lift you off the ground. But you can't remember too many times when George hit a guy on the chin and they counted the guy out. As a matter of fact, in this long streak of knockouts that he's had, I don't even know how many guys he's ever floored. I mean, they stop every one of them because he completely overpowers the guys, and he's clubbing them around a ring, and eventually the referee stops it. But he just doesn't have that electric shock when he hits you with one punch to get you out of there. Jerry can do that.
Has there been any meaningful fights, really meaningful, in George's comeback?
No, George hasn't fought anybody that was really a challenge to him in the entire comeback. Again, it's mostly blown-up light heavyweights or cruiserweights. He hasn't fought a big, strong heavyweight that can punch that I can remember on his comeback.
A lot of people don't understand why this fight right now. What is the significance of it?
Well, you know, first of all, if I managed George Foreman, he wouldn't be in this fight. Because, and Dave, you know, you're in the boxing business. Everybody identifies you with the boxing business. Mm-hmm. The average unsophisticated boxing fan, anytime I'm in a bar or at a party, they always come up and ask you one thing. How would George Foreman do with Mike Tyson? Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest money-making fight that's out there. And George is jeopardizing that by fighting a big, strong puncher like Jerry Cooney. Now, George, don't take my advice and pull out of this fight. But, you know, George is a very smart guy. He may be sure in his own mind that he's going to beat Jerry Cooney. And as big a fight as Foreman and Tyson is now, if he beats Jerry Cooney impressively, it will be even that much bigger. Tremendous amount of money. What do you think of a fight like that, Jim?
It would do tremendous interest, Gil, because George Foreman has had people curious about him for years on this comeback. No matter how much his fights have been panned and criticized, the boxing magazine people all writing in, viewers saying, hey, you know, what about George Foreman? How come you're counting this guy out? It's amazing that such a symbol like that could arouse such kind of curiosity after being away from the game for so many years. And an impressive victory could be a very big stepping stone as far as a gate to Mike Tyson. Provided, of course, that there are no hassles in the Foreman-Cooney fight.
Well, see, that's the thing. But again, George may be smarter than everybody, because if he wins this fight, he'll at least double the amount of money that he would get for fighting Mike Tyson right now. He'd be in the driver's seat. He'd be able to dictate terms to the champion, Mike Tyson.
Yeah, he was frustrated before. He tried to get this fight with Tyson for a couple of years, and he just couldn't work out the promotional details and whether he wanted to be tied up, etc. But now, if he gets a victory over somebody noted, he would be in a better bargaining position, and you have to be. The only way you can break into the heavyweight title picture if you're not the #1 contender and have any kind of negotiating leverage is to be a public figure. And to do that, you've got to get a good win. George Foreman hasn't had any good wins, but he's got Jerry Cooney in front of him, and that would be the one.
Okay, and it would go the same thing for Jerry Cooney if he scored a sensational knockout. You know, and we're talking about a fight of Foreman and Cooney that's going to take place in January. Here, Mike Tyson is putting his title on the line in November against a fairly big, mobile guy that can punch in the other guy's hometown, and nobody's talking about the fight. What about that? Do you give Razor Ruddock a chance against Mike Tyson?
None at all. I think Razor Ruddock only got the fight because he's not exposed. The Bone Crusher Smith fight almost did completely expose him because he had difficulty before coming up with the win. He's just another opponent for Mike Tyson. They had to find a place to sell the fight. Atlantic City and Las Vegas didn't want to shell out those kind of numbers to bring in the fight, especially if you're going to disillusion the players with one-round fights. So they've got to go out there. If Tyson wasn't the tremendous puncher he is, I would say he's doing some jeopardy to himself by allowing the judges from Canada to get into it. However, the judges should not get into it.
You know, I did the color commentary on the Razor Ruddock Bone Crusher Smith fight. And the one thing I have to say for Ruddock, I mean, he got hit with a punch by Bone Crusher Smith. He flew in the air. He was parallel to the canvas when he landed, and yet he got up and he won the rest of that round and finally stopped Bone Crusher Smith, something that Mike Tyson couldn't do. Of course, it was a different Bone Crusher. When he fought Tyson, he was Bone Clutcher.
Bone Clutcher came to fight against Ruddock.
But even then, finally, when Smith did decide to throw a couple of punches, he hurt Tyson in the last round. And I'm still waiting for the time when somebody nails Mike a couple of good punches to find out what's going to happen. They all call him Iron Mike, and I say it every week. He's not Iron Mike. He's made out of flesh and blood.
It's just a matter of somebody getting over that intimidation factor. If you can get through 2 rounds with Mike Tyson and be on some kind of an even keel, I think the adrenaline settles and you've got a chance to make it a decent fight. However, we're seeing that he entirely psychs out his opponents before the fights even begin. Carl Williams was scared to go in against him. Everybody, Michael Spinks, I think, froze up in the first round because all of a sudden he realized it's here. And Tyson has that effect on people. If you can get through 2 rounds with him, it's a gigantic if. It is a totally different chance for you.
And you know, the funny thing is, the one guy that did hit him was Frank Bruno. And after Bruno hit him, it seemed to me that Bruno was scared to death. It's almost like he said to himself, oh, my God, I hit this guy.
It makes you go back when Muhammad Ali would get cut. Somebody would say, hey, I did that. I don't want to get him too mad because then he might really come back at me. And that was the reaction from Frank Bruno. Of course, he'd been hit quite a lot of times, too, before that.
But, you know, probably the most successful boxing series since the old Friday night fights on Gillette have been the ESPN fights that you're associated with. Tell us a little bit about this great series and how you stand now rating-wise. Talk as long as you like today.
You know, Gil, it was designed to showcase upcoming talent. You know, it's people that you're going to see in title fights later on. The 4-round guys, the 6-round guys, so that you get some identification with them before they're 25-0 and going for the world title. And they've built quite an audience over the years, people like Frank Fletcher, Terrence Ali, elevating through that level to get into world title contention and maturing. The series is, you know, the network is 10 years old. Boxing has been a big part of that network. And the ratings right now have just been terrific for the last year. A lot of people tuning in to see the fights. And once you identify a certain night and a certain type of programming, and they know it's a quality thing, people are tuning in, and I think it's an excellent shot in the arm for boxing, too.
Well, you know, that's the way it used to be with the Friday night fights on Gillette. They took them off the air after so many years, and in those days I'd be traveling around managing Griffith and other guys. Even little old ladies would come up to me in the street and say, what happened to the Friday night fights? And that's the same kind of identification that ESPN is getting now by having these fights on a regular basis at a regular time. People know when to tune in. And ESPN is very satisfied. I understand you guys just signed a big new contract with ESPN?
Yes, indeed. And top-ranked boxing is going to continue to be a big part of what they're presenting. You know, they accused television years ago of killing boxing. They're not going to do that here because it just seems to be cultivating fans. And people are sitting home and saying, okay, I'll watch this guy develop. It's not for the world championship. It's two guys. I want to see how good they are. I want to see a guy in his pro debut, what he needs, what does he lack. I want to see him 6 months from now. Has he improved any? And I think it's something you can chart a guy's skills all the way up, and they've done a good job with that.
Well, you know, that is very, very interesting to take a kid from the time he started, and then you see him in the 6th-round stage, 8th-round stage. But you have had some title fights on ESPN as well. But the guys, most of the guys, it started out on ESPN as 4-rounders.
And they started out like that, and then it became tournaments. They were looking for that, and they had an ESPN champion for a while. And you'll see them go back and forth with programming ideas. In January, the network is going to do a ton of title fights, world title fights on Sunday nights for about 3 nights, for about 3 months, and then they'll shift back to the stuff they've been doing now. I think it shows how television has brought along the fight fan, and probably how the fight fan has brought along television, too. When the ratings are not there, you've got to get better fights or make some programming decisions. And if you're a fan, you see the fights, it cultivates interest and makes you come out to fight.
And you know, you announcers get tremendous identification out of these fights. Al Bernstein, Barry Tompkins, and yourself, you guys become superstars. I mean,
hey,
you
people
know.
coming up and asking for autographs, it's a very nice feeling. It's very wonderful that they identify you with that product. You know, you've been in the same situation yourself. It's very flattering. It's very, very gratifying.
All right, Dave, well, you've done so many fights on ESPN. Tell me 1 or 2 of your favorite fighters that have performed on ESPN.
I would say some of the favorites, Terrence Ali, because he's been so consistent the way he's performed over the years. Always a good interview, too, and the backflip was one thing that we always enjoyed watching him. I think some of the heavyweights that come up who are just starting their pro careers, their intensity is there. They always bring out some derision with the fans who, you know, take a look at these big guys and they think it's funny, and these guys, when they're trying, I've always had a good time looking over those kind of fights. And you get the Meldrick Taylors. We had the Olympians, Tyrell Biggs, when he was just starting his pro career. And the list can go on and on. Just so many good times doing the fights on ESPN.
I know I've enjoyed myself doing these color broadcasts. And Dave, it's been a labor of love for you, and we both love boxing, and it's a pleasure having you on your show. Thanks very, very much, Dave.
Thanks, Gil. My pleasure.
And we'll be back next week with another show.
Boxing, man against man, the ultimate sport.